Okay. All right. Well, hey, thanks for being on the call today. And as always, I hope that these are providing some degree of benefit for you. And as I've always said in the past, I guess my objective has always been to try to empower people and educate them and provide them information to help them maybe look at things a little bit differently than they have been, and maybe help them to understand things that have probably or potentially gotten in their way or created some of the challenges that have led to their health, and or weight challenges. So, as always, I'm not here to tell anybody to stop doing, any pharmaceutical or over-the-counter drugs. Honestly, that's not my job. My job is always just to provide you with information to help you understand, like I said, what possible other options may be and how you yourself can begin to take back control of, your health, your weight, those sorts of things. So today's not going to be any different. I'm going to actually talk a little bit about something that people, I don't think a whole lot about, and that's fluoride, and really the detrimental health effects of fluoride when it's ingested especially. So, but before I jump into that, I want to take any questions from you that that are related to the program, to the Nutrimos program. So I will stop for just a minute, and if there's any questions that anybody has that needs to be on and off this call as rapidly as possible, please go ahead and ask your question now. Okay, so I'm assuming that if you're on this call, you are probably clear on everything you need to do and don't have any challenges, and hopefully you're finding a lot of benefit from interacting with your liaison or the calls that our client relationship specialist Sarah has been making, and or the coach that you've interacted within our offices and the BCA tech. So my hope is that we're definitely getting you what you need to gather the information that you need to obviously continue to live a healthy life, not only during the program, but obviously after as well. So, all right. So last week, I talked about antibiotics and this issue with the overutilization of prescribed antibiotics, and it really has become an issue. It's creating this challenge that we're having with these superbugs that are becoming resistant to antibiotics that once were very potent in cases where there was obviously a serious health issue that a person had, and you could get them taken care of. Well, the challenge is that we're not prescribing antibiotics really anymore the way they should be prescribed. As we talked about last week, a lot of people are just getting antibiotics given to them by their primary care physician just to sort of appease that person because they feel like they need something. But one thing I also talked about last week was antibiotics showing up in our municipal wastewater plants or treatment plants. And what we're seeing is not in addition to antibiotics showing up in our water, we're seeing other pharmaceutical drugs show up in our water as well, such as oral contraceptives and antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs. And things along those lines. So pharmaceutical drugs are now starting to show up in our water, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that people are getting these drugs, taking them home, they're not using them, and then they're ultimately flushing them down the toilet, putting them or tossing them, throwing them out, or whatever it may be, and it's finding its way into our water. So one thing we talk about on our program is on the Nutrimos program is the idea of drinking filtered water, and so there's different levels of filtered water for sure. And if you have a filter system, you definitely want to know what that filter is capable of removing from your water. Some filters remove a little bit of stuff, and other filters are really good at removing the important things. I myself have an in-home water filtration system that will remove heavy metals from our water, because lead contamination is a big issue that you want to make sure you're not getting. I think it was Flint, Michigan, where there was a big water crisis here not too long ago, and I believe it was lead or something like that was contaminated the water. and people were drinking that on a daily basis, not knowing that they were consuming these poisons. So these drugs are getting in there. The lead is getting in there, and there's actually municipalities, cities within this country who are actually adding a drug intentionally to their water source, and that drug is fluoride. And it is not an approved drug, by the way, for ingestion. The FDA has not given approval for fluoride as an ingestible drug. The only thing that has been approved by the FDA as it relates to fluoride is topical application, not consumption or swallowing of that drug. And if you don't believe me, if you are a person that brushes with toothpaste that has fluoride in it, I choose not to take in fluoride because there's questions still as to whether or not fluoride is even beneficial from the perspective of preventing dental cavities and all that sort of stuff. I choose non-fluoride toothpaste, and I also do a lot of oil pulling as well. That's a whole other conversation, but real quickly, just oil pulling is I'll put coconut oil in my mouth, I'll let it liquefy, and then I'll swirl it around in my mouth for 15 to 20 minutes. And that absolutely works phenomenally well. But if you're in phase 2 or 3 of the program, obviously we don't want you doing that. You could do that when you hit phase 4 and beyond. But anyway, another conversation for another day. But if you're a person who uses fluoridated toothpaste, if you pull out your toothpaste and you read, there's going to be a warning label on that toothpaste. And it's actually a poison label that the FDA requires on all tubes of fluoride-containing toothpaste. And it's going to say something to the effect of, if you accidentally swallow more than you used for brushing, seek professional help or contact poison control immediately. Isn't that interesting? Because now you have these cities that are putting fluoride in water, and you may be drinking that fluoride water on a daily basis if you're drinking tap water. And that's why we say don't drink tap water. Now, they can add chlorine as well to tap water sometimes too. Now, both fluoride and chloride are what we call halogens. And they have a whole bunch of potential health challenges associated with them, but those halogens can also create thyroid issues as an example, okay? Bromines in bread are another example. I've talked about brominated flours. You want to avoid brominated flours. And that's why we say avoid breads in restaurants. If you don't know where it's coming from and you don't know what's in it, then there's a high likelihood that you just want to probably avoid it, unless it's one of these, farm-to-table type restaurants where typically that the food products don't have, added chemicals, colorings, brominated flours, refined oils, garbage like that, because of the potential issues they create from an interference perspective as it relates to your body's ability to express its health and its well-being. So the question I want to ask you, and you should be thinking about in terms of this idea and this concept, is really how many glasses of water or tea or coffee, or other tap water related beverages are you drinking a day? And if you drink a lot of tap water, the next thing you need to find out is it fluoridated? Are you drinking tap water that has fluoride added to it? And that's just one thing you need to be concerned about, obviously, from a tap water perspective. And if that kind of frightens you, it should, because you don't want to be consuming, many of you are consuming a drug unknowingly. You don't even know you're bringing it in. And when you understand that fluoride is both a neurotoxin, which means it's toxic to the nervous system, and you also understand that it's an endocrine disruptor, then you probably would make the choice that you're not going to consume products or water or something like that has this drug in it. Okay, so when you look at filter systems for your water, like for me, I use this company called Water Revolution. If you're interested in contacting them, you certainly can. We'll get you that information if you'd like. Just email your liaison and let them know that you were on the call today and that you're interested in contacting them and finding out more about their water filter systems. But our whole house filter system eliminates lead. It eliminates fluoride, chloride. It eliminates drugs that may be in there. And then we have an RO tank that's underneath our sink as well, okay? So I want good, clean water for myself and my family. If you have a well water system, you need to get your well water checked, basically, and you need to have it checked for heavy metals. And, arsenic is one of those things, especially in Colorado, that we need to be concerned about because of all the mining, that has been done in the past. So arsenic levels can be high, and that's something that you don't want to bring in. But if you're drinking a lot of fluoridated water, see, there's a buildup over time. That consumption over time starts to create problems. And the body, which is, as I've always said, it's amazingly resilient in terms of what it can do to battle through these constant stressors that we put into it. And a lot of these stressors come from environmental toxins, and they also come from, the toxins in the food that are added to our foods. And, I've always said, unfortunately, in America, the food in this country is designed to make us unhealthy and overweight. And the conspiracy theorist in me believes that the big pharma and the large food manufacturers in cahoots with one another. One of them makes you sick and addicted, and the other one then gives you the drug to manage the symptoms. So it's kind of sad to think that way, but unfortunately, with all the stuff that I've read and reviewed, it almost is hard for me to come to any other sort of conclusion. So my feeling is, how do we start to give people information like this so that they can start to make informed choices about the things that are going into their body? And when you're in that space, like I say, putting your head in the sand and ignorance is bliss just doesn't apply with your health, because, and maybe some of you have experienced this, but I always tell people, listen, your health is your greatest asset, because when it's gone, I don't care how much money you have and how many cars you have and how big your house is and who your friends are or any of that stuff. That stuff doesn't matter. You can't enjoy any of it anyway if you're laying in a bed because you're sick, or you don't have any energy to get out of bed, or you don't have any energy to live the life that you want to live. You see, the Nutrimos program is all about getting the body back in balance and supporting it with the nutrients and the fuels that it needs so that it can operate and function the way that it was designed to. And as that process begins to occur, that's where you start to experience the magic that this is. And if you decide to start bringing in artificial sweeteners again and eating low-fat foods again and eating high fructose corn syrup and partially hydrogenated fats and brominated, flours and things that start to mess up your chemistry, then, obviously you can start to have issues again. But the idea here is that you start to do things and you begin to experience what real health is, and you begin to experience what it's like to live in a Ferrari versus a broken down old, gremlin car that doesn't go from, A to B very fast or very well. When you get to experience the Ferrari, you want to live in that Ferrari always. And so as we give the body these things and these things begin to happen, most people make the decision, I ain't never going back to that crap again. And I want to know before I drink something, before I eat something, before I put something on my skin, before I put it on my hair, that it doesn't have chemicals that are going to screw my body's functionality up. Because if I screw my body's functionality up, then it's going to stop working the way I want it to work. And that's why this fluoride thing is so important. So what's really good about this is that the FDA started to finally get involved. You see, many European countries rejected fluoridation way back in the 1970s because they knew that it wasn't smart. It's not a good idea. We've been doing it for a while now, but finally in January of this year, the FDA sent a warning letter to a laboratory, this Kirkland Laboratories it's called, just telling them that they need to immediately discontinue the marketing of their fluoride drops and tablets, okay? So in the letter, what the FDA stated was the fluoride drops and tablets are unapproved new drugs because they are not generally recognized as safe and effective for cavities, basically, or cavity prevention purposes. And two, no manufacturer has ever provided the FDA with adequate studies to demonstrate the drug's safety and effectiveness, okay? So now this isn't the only laboratory that's selling these things, which is kind of frightening, but it's a step in the right direction at least, okay? What's happened and is still happening is that you have these large pharmacies that are selling these drops and tablets to consumers like many of you.
And it's the large ones, by the way. We're talking about Walgreens and Walmart and Rite Aid and CVS, these large pharmacies. And the pharmacists don't have a clue either, unfortunately, because they've got actual recorded conversations of pharmacists where they're selling these unapproved drugs to consumers. And the consumers are asking the question, are these things actually safe, for consumption? And what they're getting from this is that these pharmacists are assuring these people that are asking these questions that they, meaning the pharmacy, does not sell unapproved drugs, and that fluoride drops and tablets have either been approved by the FDA or don't need FDA approval. Both of those statements are false. They haven't been approved by the FDA for ingestion or consumption, and they do need FDA approval for ingestion and consumption, neither of which the FDA has provided. Okay, so that letter was certainly a great step towards bringing this to light, and you got to understand that when it comes to drugs, and the production of drugs by the big pharmaceutical companies. Listen, most of the information that's being reported is from studies that, number one, are extremely short term, so there's no long-term data that's gathered, and number two is oftentimes funded by the pharmaceutical company that wants to get the drug on the market as well. And then you got to also understand that most people that are on these boards for the FDA at one time worked for these pharmaceutical companies, and when their stint is up with the FDA, guess where they want to go back and work? They want to have an opportunity to go back to work for pharmaceutical companies frequently. So you don't bite the hand that feeds you. So there's a lot of red flags in this whole system, and that's why it's important for us to ask questions. But I guess very simply, I've always said is the key to the program, to the Nutrimost program, is that we identify what your individual unique needs are as it relates to your body's imbalances and or deficiencies from a nutrient perspective, and we start to then provide the body with those things while eliminating the toxins and the poisons and the sugars and the things that interrupt it or disrupt its function. And as we do those things, you start to see this rebalancing effect happen, this detoxification process occur, and the body starts to get itself on track relatively quickly. And that's a pretty cool thing to watch. And for those people that, don't get this and they don't take it seriously, and then they start to dabble back and do these things that, potentially are interfering with their body's expression of health and function, they can start to get back into a weight gaining state, because part of what the brown fat is doing is it's protecting you and I from toxins. So when toxins come into the body, if you don't have a good, efficient, functioning detoxification system going on already, meaning your liver, your kidneys, your lungs, your skin, able to eliminate things. There's a lot of ways that the body will get rid of toxins, but when those things start to become overwhelmed or their functionality begins to decrease, then the body starts to store these toxins in fat cells. And so it's not going to, and so you can start to see the accumulation, obviously, in the body's wanting to store fat so that it can provide a better protective mechanism. Now, there's a lot of other reasons why the body will store fat, obviously, but that's one thing that you have to think about, which is why we really want to try to avoid putting foods and drinks and personal care products and things like that on or in our bodies that really have no need being there. It's not there's no reason for us to bring them in because they're not going to support our health and our well-being. So to go back to fluoride, when you start to understand, that really it's not been proven to be that effective, and there's way more information showing the dangers of it. And then when you start talking about its being ingested, you start to see the risks that are put in people that people are put in, and specifically children, by the way, because dental fluorosis becomes a big issue for children. when you ingest it, basically what that means is you start to get the breakdown of their teeth. So it starts to affect the development of their teeth. So you see this discoloration, okay? This read you this little point from this review in this, I believe this one was from the Journal of the American Dental Association. So from the Journal of the American Dental Association, fluoride incorporated during tooth development is insufficient to play a significant role in cavity protection. Both the Centers for Disease Control and National Research Council have confirmed this, declaring respectively that fluoride's predominant effect is post-eruptive and topical. And the major anti-caries, meaning anti-cavity benefit of fluoride is topical and not systemic. In other words, fluoride works when it is applied directly to the outside of the teeth, not when swallowed. Okay, so that's a really, really important thing to understand. So why is it being added to drinking water? I have no idea. That's a great question. Okay, so when you look at dental fluorosis in children, which is a defect of their enamel, it starts to create major issues with the stains on their teeth, and then ultimately other issues and challenges for those children. Okay, now when you take into account that from a hygiene and how it looks perspective, you got to take it to another level and understand that fluoride is a neurotoxin. Okay, so when you ingest fluoride, it can also negatively impact brain development. Okay, which can result in learning and behavioral type disorders. Do we have a major increase in behavioral issues amongst our young people? I'm going to say yes. And it's really sad, sort of what we're beginning to see. A lot of these children are being just thrown antidepressants, which is not fixing their problem. And also antidepressants for children have got a black box warning, and that black box warning is that they actually increase the thoughts of suicide in kids and teenagers when they take these things. So we have to, once again, we got to step back and go, what's the real issue here? So when they're bringing in this fluoride, it can affect brain development, create learning and behavioral disorders. There are studies that have shown fluoride exposure and reduced IQ scores in children, okay, and that it will greatly impair learning and memory capacity, and so that's a big deal, I think. I certainly don't want my daughters consuming water with fluoride in it, and so obviously we've made that choice as it relates to our filter system, but we also don't use fluoridated toothpaste either. And that's the other thing is these kids, you'll see that kids eat toothpaste because the toothpaste is made to taste like candy now, because they are adding sugars and other things to these toothpastes or these sweeteners, sometimes artificial sweeteners. All right, I want to share this with you. It's from the Lancet Neurology. Let's see, the evidence of fluoride's interference with brain development is now sufficiently advanced. In a recent review in the Lancet, the Lancet, which is a peer-reviewed neurology, what the heck word am I looking for? Magazine or whatever, classified fluoride as one of only 11 chemicals. So hear that, one of only 11 chemicals known to cause developmental neurotoxicity in human beings. Fluoride has also been classified by the prestigious National Research Council as an endocrine disruptor, due in large part to its documented capacity to interfere with thyroid function and glucose metabolism. So that's a big deal. So we said earlier it's a endocrine disruptor. So endocrine glands, the thyroid, the pancreas, the adrenals potentially. You start looking at all these glands that over time can be affected, by the consumption of this drug. And Splenda, you guys, by the way, which is also called sucralose, is a chlorinated sugar, and that's why I tell people don't ever eat Splenda. That's why you just want to stay away from artificial crap in general. is that it's not real, so why bring it in? It's not doing anything to support the needs of the body in order to operate. If anything, it's interfering with the body's needs in terms of how it should function. But if you think about, Splenda or chlorinated sugars or fluoride or any of that stuff, you see these halogens will start to compete with iodine in terms of the thyroglobulin, the thyroid binding globulin, which is, how the iodine ultimately is going to get into the cells and to assist in thyroid function. It's kind of like I always say, it's like carbon monoxide and oxygen. You see, carbon monoxide will compete with oxygen for binding sites on the red blood cell, and that's why you don't want to breathe in carbon monoxide, is because the carbon monoxide will win, just like the fluoride will win and the chloride will win and the bromines will win. They'll compete with iodine and beat iodine to the binding site, and so therefore that iodine's not getting to the thyroid to support it, which leads to a potential hypothyroid picture. And carbon monoxide will beat oxygen to the binding site on the red blood cell, which is why if someone is sitting there breathing in carbon monoxide, they'll just slowly fall asleep and die. So you want to obviously stay away from that. Okay. So you've got to find out definitely, is fluoride in my water? And if it is, then you need to stop drinking that tap water like immediately. And you need to, look into filter type systems. If you have one of those refrigerator type filter systems, then you should find out from the company that made that fridge or whatever. You need to get more information, I guess, is what I'm saying. So you just need to do your due diligence on that and just ensure that that you're not bringing this drug in unknowingly. And if you choose to drink tap water to get fluoride, then obviously that becomes your choice. So this, once again, is really all about trying to help you think outside the box, and also realize that for those of you that are on this call right now and that came to Nutrimost because you wanted to lose weight, my hope is that you realize that it's not a weight loss program. Yes, the byproduct oftentimes is going to be a lot of weight loss for people, but that weight loss is going to come as you start to get your body healthy again. So my hope is that we start to help people to realize that, listen, all the fad dieting that you've done in the past, where you're really just focused on calorie counting and you're focused on food and exercise and that's it, it's not the answer. Is food and exercise and watching what type of calories you consume a part of the equation? Yeah, it is. But it's obviously not the end-all, be-all answer. Really the thing is getting to the root cause of the challenge for a person based on their unique body and beginning to support that body as it's asked us to. And that's about as complicated as we need to make it. We don't need to really make this thing any more complicated than that. So last thing I want to mention on fluoride is there is this thing going right now. It's the Fluoride Action Network. They do have a petition that I believe you can go online and sign. I think we're going to try and get this posted on our Facebook page, and we'll even probably email it out. But for people that are don't want fluoride in their water, it's something that you can certainly get involved in and help. And I'll tell you all right now, if you want me to admit my agenda, really with everything that we do, is to not only help people to get themselves empowered, healthy, and in control of their health, but it's to ultimately build an army of people where together we can make a difference. You see, we as a big group of people can ultimately facilitate change within the current model of healthcare in this country, and the challenges associated with that model, and the fact that most people are not regaining their quality of life and their joy and their energy and all that stuff from taking synthetic drugs for the last 20, 25 years of their life. Most people's health continues to decline as they get on more and more drugs. So we want to bring to light something that begins to empower people, that starts to show them the way, provides them with things that hopefully they find as valuable to support their health and their spunk and their the things that they love to do in their life. So I'll stop there, and I'll take any questions that any of you have. So go ahead and fire away if you have any questions. Okay. Well, for those of you that are on this live, thank you so much. For those of you that are listening to the recording, thanks for listening to the recording. If you have a question, feel free to email it to your liaison. I can cover the questions on the next week's calls. If you have a question that comes up, you're obviously always welcome to share those questions with your liaisons, and they will happily get the questions to me so I can answer them on these calls. So I hope today was helpful for you all. Have an awesome day. For those of you that are doing the program, congratulations. I'm proud of you. Keep focused on following this thing to the letter and how we lay it out for you. Don't cheat. It's not worth it, I promise you. We ask you not to cheat because the darn thing works so well, and if you choose to just have a little cookie, you're going to pull yourself out of this amazing state of autophagy, xenophagy, and fat burning, and sometimes it can last a lot longer than you want it to. So stay focused on the reasons why you want to be healthy, whether that's being able to get in a plane seat and travel somewhere, or, playing with your grandkids, or being intimate with your spouse, or, just feeling good in general. You got to have those strong reasons why, and they'll help to keep your hands out of the proverbial cookie jar for sure, and focus on being well. And I promise you, when you're done with the program, there are plenty, and I mean plenty, of healthy options for you to take care of those things that you think you're going to miss or that you're missing now. I can guarantee you. So have a great day, everybody. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week.